if I can find wins in what sucks in my life, what can break me?
On today's episode, I speak to the clinical psychologist, Dr. Raul Sanchez. On this episode, we speak about renewing your mind and your perspective, and the importance of allowing your adversity to strengthen your character. Stay tuned. This is an episode not to be missed. So today on the call, we have Raul Sanchez. Dr. Raul, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing amazing.
Thanks for being on the call. I know it's 8:30 p.m. your side right now. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's in the evening over here.
Okay. Yeah, it's just Monday morning on this side now, getting the week started, and you basically winding down the weekend.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Got some family time scheduled here in a little bit, so that's good.
Nice. So Raul, do you want to tell us who is Raul Sanchez?
So I'm a man of God. I am a father. I'm a husband. I actually am a grandfather. I'm an ex-college football player. I have a PhD in psychology. I bow hunt. I ride road bike. Outdoorsman, play a lot of sports. And I love to lay on the ground, play with the kids, and just an all activities kind of guy.
Nice. So it sounds like you wear a lot of different hats, that you man many interests.
Okay. Yes, correct. I like to be outdoors, be active.
Okay. And if you should say if there are like maybe 3 core things or passions that sum up that all of these things are related to, what would you say that is, if you could say?
So like the very first piece there is like a living legacy coach. That's me. And what I mean by the living legacy is people talk about leaving your legacy when you're dead. So like my name can go on a hospital wing, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely amazing. Or I could gift, a building to a school or something. Amazing work.
Okay.
But in the field that I do, people say to me all the time, my dad was an amazing man, but I never knew him. My grandpa left all this stuff, but I never knew him. And they see me and they have these incredible regrets. So my push is to teach people the living legacy, which is when I know or come through a program or a plan, I have a nugget that I want to teach. I teach my kids right now.
Okay.
So that down the road, when I die, you'll take my kids out and say, "Hey, Tyler, you tell me about your father." Okay. It's super sad for me to work with people who have to take other people out. And they would say, "Oh, Kyle, I take you out for coffee because I need you to tell me stories about my dad. I never knew him."
Yeah.
That's crushing. Okay. So the living legacy piece is anytime I study and find something, I let my kids know right away. I send a big text. We're in a big family group. Sometimes we do a family FaceTime, and I'll say, "Hey, check this out." And I teach it real time. So they, they're 20, 23, 32. And then my youngest daughter is 11. So, sometimes I teach her differently because she's still young, but everybody else I teach in real time right now. So that's a living legacy coach. That's one of my big staples of who I am.
Okay. That's really awesome. I like the whole idea, the whole concept of being a living legacy. And like you said about the right here and the right now, doing what you can while you're here, because all of our time is limited. It's all running out. And
correct.
Even though we are thinking about the future and not wanting to leave a legacy, we can start doing it right now, living that legacy. So really powerful.
100%.
Love that.
Yeah. Think about just things you learn from from diet, from working out, from nutrition, from maybe a different thing you use to work out, So a coach, who's a triathlon guy told me that I eat too much when I go run. Because I was having a full bowl of like oatmeal and a banana, and I don't remember else what a cup of coffee, and he was like, "I eat a quarter cup of oatmeal, drink water," and he can outrun me. So I'm like, "Whoa, okay, I got it." So then I tell everybody else like, "Hey, we're overeating before we work out." Just little simple things like that, and then there's deeper things of God, deeper things in psychology that we can teach too.
Okay, awesome. And then I just want to touch on the living legacy again. Why do you think it is really difficult for fathers to actually live this concept of being a living legacy at that particular moment, being present, being vulnerable, expressing their true feelings? Why do you think
that? The number one excuse I hear, and it's legit, is my dad never taught me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if we take a look at default mode, just like you buy a brand new phone, it's
Mm-hmm.
set in default mode. You have to program it.
Mm-hmm.
Our kids come out default mode. We program them. And unfortunately, the program that we program is actually default mode.
Mm-hmm.
I will parent my kids exactly how my father parented me, unless I say, no, I'm not doing that.
Yes.
Understand?
I do.
So a lot of people don't have that because they had what's called PO dads. PO dad is a provider only.
Mm-hmm.
I go to work, I bring home the money, I'm killing it at work. I'm working for promotions. Do you know how much, I buy blood, sweat, and tears to give you all the things you want?
Mm-hmm.
And when push comes to shove, the kids don't care about that stuff. They want a relationship.
Exactly.
And they realize that kids will tell me, like, my dad's so stupid. He thinks I'm dumb. He's trying to buy me.
Mm-hmm.
Kids get it. They get it. So why do we pretend that we don't know? We know, we feel guilty. So what we do is we work harder and give them more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the number one reason why guys don't do that is it wasn't taught to them. And the number one reason why it wasn't taught to them is their dads are stuck in PO mode, which is the provider only.
Mm-hmm. And I also see that you have ran some men's groups.
Yes.
To do this form of teaching during these groups.
Yes. So we have a conference that I teach called Resilient Men, Resilient Men's Conference, where I teach these concepts.
Okay. Awesome. And then tell me, what is the meaning? Because I see resilient is really a word that resonates a lot with you. Because tell me a bit about resilience, what it means to you.
Yeah. So resilience is the concept that you bounce back, right? So bounce back from what, right? Adversity. What is adversity? Adversity is hardship, misfortunes, and a set of them. We often will say a series of misfortunate events. So one bad thing leads to another bad thing. So those are hardships. Those are adversities. And what I teach is this. People always talk about like overcoming, like getting around it, kind of moving over it. Like, oh man, you overcame so much adversity. The real issue is you have to move through it.
Yeah.
Because if you move through it, you pick up the lesson. And if I can pick up a lesson in what sucks, I no longer fear what sucks. Dude, think about this. If I can find wins in what sucks in my life, what can break me?
Exactly.
What? What? Nothing. So, I mean, I get it. People go like, oh, you're so fake. You're so phony because you always act like everything's all great. I go, no, I don't. But here's the idea. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity. So the person who has fallen the most realizes that the faster I fall, if this makes any sense, like I move toward the failure fast, knowing that I'm going to find a nugget that I'll be able to level up my next fall. Yeah. So this is just my water jug, and I don't know let's see if I can get this way. There we go. Resilient. So that concept is a little round ball, like a handball, racquetball. And all those little lines are rubber bands.
Okay.
And the concept is every time I fall down, I find a nugget. I sift through the rubble. I sift through the pain. I sift through and I find an idea. Like, wow, I could fix it next time. I put a rubber band on the ball. So as somebody who's afraid of failing, they just have a ball. Yes. And they get skinned up all the time. They have soft skin, weak skin, right? They don't have tough skin. And somebody who falls all the time has all these rubber bands on them that protects them. So when they fall, they're cushioned. And so the ability to bounce back from adversity is the concept of resilient. And my concept is fall fast, find something you can wrap your head around, like, hey, this wasn't all that bad because here's what I learned. Boom, put a rubber band on. Let's keep climbing. Let's keep moving. Let's keep going. And so you get people like, dude, I found out 4 things that, about our loss. I'm like, let me hear them. Like, okay, what are you going to do about it? And they're like, dude, this is amazing. They're gone. They're running.
Yeah. And I agree with you. Through any hardship, any adversity, there are lessons. Lessons to make us wiser, to make us stronger, to make us smarter as we move forward.
Yes. That's correct.
And losing is as much part of winning as as winning is, because you can't win without really losing. It forms part of the process. So is failure. In order to really succeed, you need to fail. You need to be willing to fail. But it's about how do I detach myself from the emotional component of it so that I can just focus on the lessons. And and see why it's not working, as opposed to feeling like I'm the failure, like I'm the loser. And I think a lot of people get stuck in that, at that point where they feel like the loser, they feel like the failure. So I really
Yes,
like that concept of, we need to develop that thicker skin. And
absolutely.
I do believe that the hardships in life are necessary to develop that, because, like you said, it creates that rubber ball effect. Tell me a bit
Yes.
about your own personal struggles that helped you come to the conclusion that, hardships are one of my biggest gifts.
Yeah. So I loved baseball, playing as baseball as a kid, and I had a single parent mom. So growing up, we were very poor. My birth dad suicided. He checked out in life. So I had a lot of pain just not having a dad. My stepfather figure, my mom's boyfriend, and father of my siblings, he was an alcoholic and he abused us. Like, we should have been taken home, or taken removed from the home. So like, if you're familiar with the ACE study, the adverse childhood experiences, so that's what measures trauma. The scale goes from 0 to 10. My score is an 8. So I should have been removed. So I had a lot of pain. So riding a bike was one of the ways I escaped my house. And my mom worked 3 jobs to hold the fort down, and because he was an alcoholic and most of the time a bum in between jobs. So I rode my bike all over town. I mean, literally like 3 miles one way just to a practice and come back. If we had double headers, or tournament, ride my bike back and forth all day. One field that I went to was like 6 miles away. I rode my bike there all the time, multiple times a week. So I got really big legs. I got really strong. One time I came home with a backpack. I used to stick weights in it because I realized this big hill that I ride, I couldn't do it. Then I realized before it was too easy. So I went from, wow, I never used to be able to ride this hill, and now it's too easy. So I was 10. And I wanted to, just steal bases and hit home runs. And so I had the mindset that, like, I'm going to ride my bike and lift weights. So I packed a backpack and stuck a bunch of weights in it. And I came home and set it on the ground. And my sister thought I stole stuff, because, just to be honest, I had some trouble with that too. So she's like, "Where'd you get all this stuff from?" I'm telling mom, and she opens up my backpack and she sees a bunch of dumbbells that, with no bars, just all the weights. She's like, "What's wrong with you?" And then her friends started laughing at me, and she's like, "My brother's weird. He always does this weird stuff." Okay, then I get to high school and I'm playing football, and I realized something. I realized I could take a hit and bounce back up. I mean, I'm not saying it didn't hurt. It hurt, but like, it just didn't wreck me. Kids would get hit, knocked out of wind, and they walk off the field. I get hit, get knocked out of wind, and I just walk back, and I talk to myself. I'm like, "Hey, you got this. Like, hey, you can't quit. This is your opportunity. Like, be strong." And I just had this self-talk from all the pain. And I realized that when I got beat as a kid, if I cried, it was worse. Like, "Hey, I'm going to give you a reason to cry." So I learned how to hide the pain and self-talk. And so what's really weird is, looking back, like, I was like, I would never wish my life as a child on everyone else because of the pain. But I also can understand people like, man, how can we discipline people's lives to make them have tough skin like I had without the abuse part of it? Make sense?
Completely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
obviously, like, I understand, like, obviously it had to be traumatic, like you said, losing your father at a young age, but then also
Yes.
having a stepfather who was abusive towards you and who wasn't really a role model. But
Correct.
it's really powerful that at the age of 10 you were able to know that what I'm doing right now can actually be valuable to where I want to go. And it's
Yes.
because not everybody is able to, especially at that age, being able to, because the prefrontal cortex, as you know, is not really developed. So being able to determine or think about the future, plan in the head doesn't really exist. So it's great that you were able to do that at that particular moment. So I like the fact that you said that pain became something that you use to craft your own superpower. And
Yes.
that is something that I do a lot in my teaching as well, is try to show people that ultimately, no matter what life is giving you, that pain, that can become your fuel to push you. But it's
Yes.
how do you learn to deal with that pain, to handle that pain, to use that pain to basically build up your rubber ball, like you mentioned. So, and I like the fact that you also say that you didn't simply allow that pain to drive you to become like your stepfather, because that's usually what happens. But instead, you said, "How can I use this intentionally and purposefully to still drive what I want out of life, to get what I want out of life?" Tell me a bit
Yes.
about, what
Correct.
do you think? Why do some people not not really take control over that pain, because growing up, we tend to be, like you say, socialized. We become like our parents.
Yes.
Why is it that some, like yourself, are able to say, you know what, I'm going to take this pain and I'm going to craft it and change it to a different direction, to use it as in a different point of view, to get something else, as opposed to allowing it to drive me to become like my stepfather, because I have the reasons to.
Yeah. I mean, I give the credit to the Lord. My grandma's sister, so it'd be my mom's aunt.
Mm-hmm.
Her name's Aunt Jerry, Thea Jerry. So she used to come pick me up and my older sister because she knew our situation, and she would take us to Dunkin' Donuts back in the day and get us, milk and donuts to go to church. And so basically hearing of God and hearing the pain and listening to the Bible studies and just listening to people in the Bible who had pain and they just like trusted God and did it anyway. So I'm sure, I mean, I didn't make the connection as well as you would think I would probably, but it sinks in. And so there's pieces that like, you think, I probably get all the stories wrong. And I would just say in my head, like, oh, this is going to be like David, or this could be like Daniel. And I would just had this ability to persevere. So the other concept was, I was in trouble for school for fighting. So I was beating kids up. This is back in the day in the 70s here in the United States where principals could spank you. So I would get spanked at school with a paddle because I fought in school. So I knew that outlet wasn't working. If I cried at home, I get spanked and more punishment for being a sissy. Mm-hmm. So that didn't work. So my only outlet moving was church and then sports. Okay. And so it just kind of naturally fell together there. So I pushed it as hard as I could into the sport world. And then I was playing up and stuff like that, and just became very successful athletically.
Okay. I like that. Like you said, the outlet you decided to use was just something that provided value to you and your future. And I think that is also something where most people go wrong, is that they choose the wrong outlet in a way.
Yes.
And then let's speak a bit about, obviously, I know that your focus as a psychologist is on the earlier years of development. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You want to speak a bit about like identity, because I know identity is really important as individuals. Like you say, the story we tell ourselves, the narrative. You want to speak a bit about how identity really gets constructed during the early stages of our life.
Yes.
Why that's so important for us as adults.
It is extremely important because it's a personal narrative that puts me in a box. Mm-hmm. So if I say I'm not an athlete, or sometimes people can't find activities at college or high school, and I'll say, hey, what about just a cross country team? What about a running club? What about a frisbee disc golf club? And they'll say, I'm not sporty. Mm-hmm. Okay, so by saying I'm not sporty, any activity that you mention and moving, they're done. Mm-hmm. And the reason is their narrative is I'm not. Okay, so what can you do? Chess club. Oh, I'm not smart. And so the identity pins them. It's a mental prison. And so I keep finding until they give me one open, and then I push in that area, and then we renew that one area. And so the identity development is huge because it's personal, it's relational, and then there's also ethnic identity and development. So like when I was in middle school, I didn't want to be Mexican. Mm-hmm. I wanted to have straight hair. I didn't want curly hair because everybody had just straight hairdos, and you could just go look in a magazine and say, hey, I want that guy's hair, and they would get it. And then I'm like, I just have the same haircut, just like, so our family calls it a Mexi-fro, a Mexican afro. So it's just a Mexi-fro. So like my hair only got popular when the perm came in, the permanent hairdo where people would go pay for it. And then I was pretty cool for a couple of years. Right. And then I got okay with it. And then I was like, okay, so Mexicans being cool. I get to grad school and we learn ethnic identity models where people swing through a bunch of stages. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, there's this social economic model. On top of that, there's this personal model. So there's 3 layers of identity. But it seems so deep, but here's the reality. The reality is it all comes down to self-talk. Mm-hmm. So pretend I'm your coach and you haven't been getting a hit in baseball. And all of a sudden, you popped one out in the outfield and then you're out. But you come and I like high five you and like, yes, you hit the ball. Let's go. Right. And you go sit down and throw your helmet. And you're like, but I still got out. I'm still not sporty. Mm-hmm. And it's over. Like you lock yourself in the prison again, right? And this happens at home. So you could go do anything. Like you get a spelling bee and a parent just says, oh, why'd you miss 2? Instead of saying, oh, you got 98, good job. Why'd you miss two? So we put these frames around kids are like, oh, I suck at spelling. No, you missed two. How come you think you suck? And so the self-talk is what frames the identity, and it's stacked over years. So it's not as deep as we think it is, but it's all the power that we give it because it's personal. All right. So I say it like this. If you said to me, hey, Sanchez, you're awesome, that has to I have to check that at the door. I got a little peephole and I'm like, hey, excuse me, who are you? And then you tell me what you're going to say. And then I'm like, oh, okay, do I accept that or not? Okay, thank you. You can come in.
Yeah.
But if you say something that I don't agree with, like, hey, you're a really good athlete. And I think, no, I'm not. I have to check you at the door. You don't get in.
Yeah.
Now my own self-talk has just like a fob in my pocket. I walk through the door and it's just like the door just opens and I just move through. I don't even know. I don't check my own thoughts. I have no self-awareness of my self-talk, even though my self-talk's wrecking me. Mm-hmm. So I'm deconstructing my identity without even realizing it.
Yes.
Okay. And then all of us go, hey, stay away from Raul. He's toxic. I mean, no matter what you say, that dude will bring you down, man, because they're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Completely makes sense.
Yeah,
Thanks
correct. So
thanks for that. I really like the fact that you said there are different layers to it. But another thing that stood out was the fact that you said it's also our focal point, what we are focusing on at that particular moment. Because like I said, the frame limits whether it is the kid who swings and loses or gets out, and he focuses on I missed the ball or I'm out, as opposed to where his focus is going to. And how do you think, how can we improve our focus as even adults, like to say that we focus on the most important things that are actually valuable to us, as opposed to things that are breaking us down or more empowering to us and our identity?
Yes, correct. So this is where goal setting comes in. Goal setting is super important, as you know, because if you work with a client who can't set goals, we're stuck. Mm-hmm. But how do you get a client to set goals who can't see outside, his or her own, history of failure? Mm-hmm. So this is where Renewing the Mind Clinic, Renewing the Mind podcast, this is where it all comes from, the word renewing. So it comes from the Bible, Romans 12:2. Mm-hmm. And I'll read it to you, and then it has 3 parts. But the Bible just says this: do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then the second part is be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And then the third part is so that you may test and approve that which is God's perfect and pleasing will. So there's 3 steps. We don't conform, we transform, and we test God and find what's awesome about his will for us. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I moved those into 3 steps. So the first step is renew your perspective. We move toward uncertainty, and then we find what's awesome about that. Okay. So we have 3 layers of goal setting. So the first goal setting is, how do we renew a perspective? Mm-hmm. So a kid who says, and I'll use my son because it happened. So he was a sophomore, 10th grade. He was playing quarterback all throughout his career, and I coached him in little league, little youth football. And then he's got this superstar behind him who's like 6'5", and Tavian's like 5'10", my son. So he's like, hey, Dad, the coach said I can't play quarterback anymore, so he wants me to move to linebacker. I haven't played linebacker since 4th grade. He's like, so basically it's over. I'm going to go to year-round soccer because he plays soccer too. And I said, whoa, hold up. So I said, first, let's just renew our perspective here. So I said, what's the first piece about defense? He goes, I haven't played from how many years? I'm like, where's he putting you? Outside linebacker. I'm like, okay. Where do you think you're on the depth chart? He's like, 4 out of 4. I'm like, okay. So this is heading into spring. And I said, where do you think you can be? And he goes, what do you mean? I'm like, well, by fall, where do you think you can be? He's like, it depends on the coaches. I'm like, does it? And he pauses a little bit and he looks at me and I'm like, how many people can you run down on that list? And he goes, well, for sure, the 4th one, because he just put me 4, so I could beat out the 3rd one. I know I can. Like, okay, so you'll be 3rd heading into the fall. And he goes, well, I mean, if I went after it, I could probably be 1st or 2nd. Like, okay, so you'll be 1st or 3rd. I'm confused. And then you start to just see him renew his perspective. So we set some goals. Long story short, he started, and then he became all district at outside linebacker. And the first time he played linebacker in, 6 or 8 years or whatever it was. Okay. And this is how this works. So once you renew the perspective, right, you can see a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
So many people get wrecked. It's like a dead end. Okay. So I always tell them like this, look at the clock. You're on the 12. Okay. That path you're done. You're right. Like, quarterback's over. I'm sorry, bro. Now what? There's 11 other positions. There's 11 other ways we can look at this. Let's find one. And you just keep moving, and something will stick. Now, a lot of times, especially if you have a stubborn kid who's also smart, because, stubborn goes with smart. So they're going to just be like, no, that's not going to work. No, that's not going to work. And then they'll say, this will work. And I'm like, let's go. Okay. So once you renew, then you move. Like, okay, now we're going to set goals like how much weight you want to gain, how much faster you want to get, how many workouts we're going to be doing. And then you set those pieces, right? And then the last part is the first time you hit a goal, we find it's called a WAT moment, which is what's awesome about that. So WAAT,
Mm-hmm.
two A's, WAAT. So what's awesome about that? So I'm like, bro, you hit your PR. Let's go. Well, what's awesome about that? What do you mean? What's awesome about that? Like think back to where you couldn't even see yourself getting off the couch and now you're killing some goals, right?
Yeah.
And so we start to reconnect to that why that makes kids fly. And it's just amazing, right?
Nice. And I like the last point you also mentioned there is that like what's awesome about that, because sometimes we especially people who are high achievers, you're constantly driven and you forget about the little achievements or milestones along the way because you haven't that idea. And that can sometimes be detrimental to you because, like you said, you don't acknowledge that, and that is value. It can add another layer to your self-esteem or your belief in yourself that, oh, what I did do that after not knowing I could run a 10 kilometer, even though my goal is to do a marathon, but I did 10 kilometers. Wow. So all these little wins, and that's something I've also learned along the way, is that I need to celebrate my little wins along the way. It's a journey ultimately.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And each win makes me easier.
Yes, correct. And it closes the loop because like you're driving, you know, when you celebrate, that's the dopamine release. That's the excitement. That's the happiness stuff from serotonin. Your brain's on fire. Like, woohoo, let's go. It makes you more willing to do it again.
Nice.
You know? Mm-hmm.
And then speak about identity, because now we spoke about obviously identity in like childhood or adolescence. Now, I know the model usually starts like during adolescence, we start to form our own identity. But now in as adults, we obviously, because I see the same cycle happening in adults as well, like people finding themselves, going through this process of the identity, finding who they are. Speak a bit about identity development in adults. Is it very similar to the identity development during adolescence?
Yes, it is very similar. But what tends to happen with adults is they are past the fear cycle part because they've already done some things. Where they get stuck is they are stuck on their biggest loss that they think ended something huge. So like maybe I'm in a business and I want to own my own business. So I cash out some money and I start a new business, an entrepreneurship thing, and it fails.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that failure, I'm pinned behind that failure and I don't know what to do. So my identity isn't necessarily stuck. I'm in regret.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I teach people like, look, your goal burned up. It caught on fire. And I'm sorry about that. So we talk about the pain. We talk about how much money they lost, let them express their pain. And then I ask this, I'm like, okay, if that was your house and it burned down, would you avoid it like you're avoiding this conversation? What do you mean? You wouldn't want to go back and see if there's an old trophy or see if, like, I don't know, one of your Stevie Wonder albums is still available. Like are you going to go back? What are you going to do? Do you think you could go, sift through the rubble? And that thing kind of opens up their mind. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, okay, but like, look, what if I'm your cousin and I'm not want to start a business? Before I just jump out blind, don't you think you could help me?
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think you could coach me? And they're like, oh, me a life coach, bro? No way. Like, and I'm like, maybe not life, but an entrepreneurship coach. Like, what am I going to teach them? Tell me the lessons you've learned. And I'll probably tell you, I don't even know that lesson. And then you start to open up their mind again, right? You renew their perspective, but they're not necessarily afraid. They're stuck in regret, which is it looks a little different, right? The other kid is just like, I can't. This person is like, man, I'm in so much pain. Nobody even understands. Like, I'm such an idiot. Like I cashed out this, I cashed out that. Like I went all in and I still suck. So they're really, really getting beat up by regrets. And so we have to renew their perspective about the regret, which is sift through the pain, find a couple wins. Those are the WAP moments. What's awesome about your house burning down. I know that sucks to even say, but when you release that, if you can find glory in the pain, there's nothing that can stop you.
Yeah.
You find the lesson, right? And this is where you think about greats, like super greats, like GOATs, like Michael Jordan, right? So, those stories, on his documentaries is like he would create a war where there's no war.
Yeah.
Like, you won by 30. What? But that dude didn't shake your hand. So now you're all teed off about him.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. So now you're going to come drop 55. He had to create these dramas and these wars because he had to set another goal. How are you going to set another goal? Create pain.
Yeah.
Okay. Then why would that work? Because the pain ignites that fire, and that
Mhm.
fire is fuel. Okay. And then so they'd stick up something in the locker room about like how the Pistons hated him, and they're going to punch Jordan because he's soft. Like, here we go, lace up, bro. And what starts to happen is like that pain creates the momentum, and people who get it, they're addicted to that. They create pain. Like Jordan later on said, he lied about some of those stories to create the pain to push him,
Yes.
because otherwise you get complacent. Like, we won by 30. I probably should skip practice.
Mhm.
Right. And we all fall into that.
Yeah.
So once you teach somebody who doesn't know it how to do it, it's pretty amazing. And then people come in and give me credit for all the stuff that they did. And I'm like, bro, I mean, you can high five me for teaching you to sift the pain, but I
Mhm.
have no idea how to do what you just did. You're somewhere I haven't been,
Yeah.
and they light up like, whoa, I could teach you for sure.
Mm.
You
But that's
know?
the thing is that I also see a lot of people that sometimes, like I said, become complacent in life or they doubt themselves.
Yes.
Um, and sometimes they just need to dig into that pain that they have because everybody has pain, everybody experiences pain, traumas, adversities. And sometimes
Yes.
shut the door on it. But there comes a time where you have to dig in and grab some of that ashes just to keep pushing yourself to go forward. Um,
Yes.
so I like that analogy. And even like I also watched a documentary by Jordan. And I was just like, wow, it just shows how powerful pain can be if it is used with intent. Because once
Right.
again, that monster, most people allow the monster to control them instead of controlling that monster. And
That's
that is
correct.
that's the difference between, like you say, somebody who can be a great and somebody who can be, let's say, a serial killer.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because they start attacking people because the pain just spills into other people. It's not controlled.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Correct.
Oh, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out on your Sunday evening to chat to me about your journey and about the insight and wisdom that you have.
Yeah. Thank you so much.